That is the Reading Circle Hour, and I have a guest on tap today. I'm about to get him introduced. Dr. Ashley, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. I can hear you, so I know we are good. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get him introduced. We met under interesting circumstances and became fast friends, and then our paths continued to cross at our church. And he's done so much wonderful work. I said, I got to have you on my show because he's written books and articles. And that is none other than the Reverend Dr. Willard Walden Christopher Ashley Sr. He is the president and CEO of Dr. Willard Ashley Sr. LLC. Through his LLC, Dr. Ashley is in demand as a keynote speaker, preacher, consultant, educator, psychoanalyst, marriage and family therapist, and group therapist. Dr. Ashley is the second African-American in the long history of the New Brunswick Theological Seminary to be granted tenure. He made history as the first African-American dean of the seminary. Dr. Ashley is an advisory board member of Andover Newton Seminary at Yale Divinity School. Ashley teaches Doctor of Social Work students at Rutgers University and New York University. Since 1996, he has been the founder and senior pastor of the Abundant Joy Community Church in Jersey City, New Jersey. His pastoral journey began in 1982. And he has since served as senior pastor at 4 American Baptist churches. Dr. Ashley has authored 4 articles in the Men of Color Study Bible, published 4 books, and contributed to numerous articles and chapters. His reach extends to the media, having hosted a Black Entertainment Television, or BET, program and appeared on radio in New York City. Reverend Ashley was a staff psychotherapist at the Riverside Church in New York City. He is a fellow in the American Association of Marriage Family Therapists. Ashley also holds memberships in Black Psychoanalysts Speak, the American Group Psychotherapy Association, and the National Association for the Advancement of Psychoanalysis. Dr. Ashley has received numerous awards. He is in Who's Who in Medicine and Healthcare, Who's Who in America, and Who's Who in the World. He is the proud father of an adult son, Chris, and is married to Tanya Pagan Raggio Ashley, MD. Raggio. So I was right the first time. Okay, Raggio Ashley, MD, FAAP, MPH. Dr. Ashley and his wife, Tanya, are emotional support humans to Serafina, their 13-pound Shih Tzu. Welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, none other than Reverend Dr. W.C. Ashley Sr. Dr. Ashley, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning on this snowy morning in New York metropolitan area.
It sure is. It's like, and snow is, I'm always grateful and thankful to be alive regardless of what element, but I will say snow is my least favorite element.
Well, I've already been outside, had to shovel the snow, get the spouts off and running, and take the snow off the car. So I'm ready to go.
Yeah. See, that's what I mean. See, and that's what I mean by my least favorite, because to me, snow just creates a lot of extra work. It's like you have to work to get to work. I mean, it's like
put down the ice melt for the mail people and delivery people, all of that stuff. Exactly.
That's right. It's just a lot of extra work. Now, it's pretty. Everybody said, "What's so pretty to look at?" I'm like, yeah, it is. But even this morning, getting to the studio for me, I mean, because like I said, when I leave here, I'm going, after breakfast, I'm going to see if I can get my new tires on. But just trying to get up here, I was slipping and sliding like crazy. It was like extra work. Yeah. And so it's like, yeah. So, but in any event, just grateful and glad to be alive. But I'm happy to have you on the show because, again, I remember one of the visits you had to the church, you were saying you were in the process of writing a book that was going to be released in the future, but I know you already had some books published. So I want to talk about kind of like everything based on what we talked about in your bio. So as I said, I kind of start from the beginning, like, where did this all begin? I mean, did you?
Well, thank you so much for being on. It's been a minute since I've been on radio, so I'm glad to be on. Some fond memories of being on radio. So thank you. It began, believe it or not, with a black man from Watley, Georgia. He had a 4th grade education that ended up finding and falling in love with a black woman from Dillon, South Carolina, And my mom was 5'10", 5'11". She was one of the first ebony fashion models. So I said, Dad, you did all right for yourself, guy.
That's right.
They say, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. Like, okay. Let's stay. And it's interesting because even though my dad only had a fourth grade education, and I've been in a lot of therapy, so I worked through this stuff, okay, I still think he was one of the smartest men I ever met in my life.
I can agree with that, because I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of college and degrees and intelligence and all that, because so keep going.
And he could see things that nobody else could see. And so I learned a lot from him. I didn't realize till after he had passed away that he had played in the Negro Leagues. Oh. And I thought he was really good at baseball, but I didn't realize he was that good. And so it started with the two of them, because it didn't matter if they taught Black history in school or not, they taught it.
Right.
And I remember in the summertime, there were two reading lists. There was the reading list the school gave you, and then there was Dad's reading list. And Dad, in fourth grade education, had us write book reports for him.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Okay. And so, I mean, so it started there. And then with my mom, my mom was the lecture person. She would lecture and okay, Mom, can I just have a beating instead? Can you just like whip me and get it over with, please? You know, because the lecture's killing me. But I mean, she would always say mind over matter.
Right.
And we were blessed and cursed at the same time, because we grew up in a 2-parent household. So many of our classmates did not. And my dad would literally, between the two of them, they never missed a PTA meeting, ever.
That's right.
And sometimes they created some. If I came home with a C, Dad was showing up at school the next day.
I know that's right.
And here was his speech. Either he can't learn or you can't teach. We're gonna straighten this out right now. Either you can't teach or he can't learn. Which one is it? Okay. And I remember in junior high school looking up and saying, my dad's in the school. Oh no, I am so embarrassed.
Right.
I'm trying to be cool. And here's my dad showing up to ask the teacher, how did he get a C?
But see, and everything that you're describing right now, if we had more of that, I'm not saying we don't have any of that now, but if we had more of that now, our education system would be better than it is. Now, there's another conversation about the systemic side on the education system. But if we had more parents and students who worked like what you're describing, we would get, just like your dad said, now listen, which is it? It's one or the other. Right. Either he can't learn or you can't teach. Now, we got to figure this out.
Right. And so the teachers knew that, you know, Mr. Ashley, kids, she will take off from work unannounced and show up and ask, okay, what's going on here? And we were not discipline problems. I mean, that was real clear, because that was not acceptable. And you know, you are not embarrassing our name. So you will go end up on time. You'll do what's asked of you. And we did all of that. And I think I only had one Black teacher until I reached about the 10th grade. 4th grade, Mrs. Margie Henderson. I remember her to this day. And she told my parents, she says, your son is super smart. You know, he does his homework in school. And they looked at me like, so what's he doing when he's in the house? I don't know. It's not homework, because he did that before he left. And my dad says, then can you give him more homework? I'm like, no, I'm good. No, he needs more homework.
Now, see, I'm sitting here listening to you, and it's like extremely similar to my upbringing. And what I'm doing my dissertation on, my research is what I want to do, is because I am totally against standardized testing. However, there are some African-American kids who really do well with I mean, there are some African-American kids. So I want to know, what is it that's different and I know what the answer is going to be. This is what we're talking about. I want to know, what is the difference between the child who does well on the standardized test, African-American child, and the child who tanks it. I want to know what's going on in the home. What's going on in the home? What is influencing, or what's happening that allows this child to be a success compared to his classmate who has the same teacher, Same lesson, same curriculum, but I want to know the difference. And what we're talking about, I believe, is what the research is going to show. When you have parents who are doing the things that you describe, same thing my parents did, you will get a successful student.
And in our household, at least for me, anything other than the A was not acceptable.
Wow.
We only get A's in this house, and that kind of changed a little bit with some of my other siblings. But anyway, there was, for me, it was only A's are acceptable. And I remember some people may see it as abusive, but that he read me well. I remember getting a 98, and he said, "So what did you miss?"
But see, to me, that falls in line with expectation. Because see, like I said, there are certain things that if parents have with their children, I declare that they will get a better child. And the same thing, if these things are not done, you may get either a low to mediocre child because these things are not done. But that was a setting of expectation. And people usually, and because you're a therapist, people usually rise to the expectation.
And coupled with that, I mean, my dad was strict. He was hard on me. He and I would have conflict. Typical kind of teenager, smell your own musk kind of conversation, conflicts. However, both of them, it was clear they loved us. And so that part made it easier to handle. And I go around his friends and go, "Oh my God, you must walk on water." So my son, really? Yeah, my dad, yeah. Oh God, he drives us crazy. My son did this and my son did that. And I remember playing. I played in two different little league teams. The Henry Hudson Little League, and then also the YMCA Harlem Little League team. And when he could, my dad came to almost most of my games. Sometimes I wish he didn't come. That's another conversation. But he would come to the games, and he would then on the way home critique what I did well, what I didn't do well, and how to improve. I remember once I was playing. I had two strikes, and they brought in a relief pitcher because it was close hitting a home run both times. The guy throws the ball. It was really way outside. The ump said strike three. I threw my helmet down. My dad stopped the game, said, "Pick up your helmet, apologize to the umpire, because we don't do that."
See, there you go. And today is just the opposite. Now you got the parents running out to stand ready to fight the umpire and fight the coach and all that kind of good stuff. But see, again, I'm listening to you because like your parent, my mom and dad, they went to every back to school night, didn't miss a one. They had a speech. I mean, this happened throughout high school, like you said. And I would hear them. I knew it was, I could recite it with them because at the end of the conversation, I would hear my mom say, "Okay, now here's our number. If Mark gets out of line, you do what you need to do, and then you give us a call, and when he gets home, we're going to do what we need to do." And that was said from kindergarten through 12th grade. and I would listen to them. And so, but again, I'm going to say, when you have those kind of parameters in place, when you have those kind of boundaries in place, the kids get it. I mean, I always tell people I was not stupid because at the time I was going to school, teachers could do things. They could hit you. They could pop you. They could take the ruler. My second grade teacher would put us in the closet. So listen, I'm not taking two tail whippings. I'm going to get one in school and get one when I get home. Oh, absolutely not. So they never had any discipline issues out of me. But it is so important.
Well, we had community because remember, we didn't have cell phones. Before I got home, my mom knew what I did in school. That's
right.
Without a cell phone, because we had community. And so if you did something, the community, and unlike today, you knew the police officers because they lived in the neighborhood. You knew the firefighters. You knew the school principal. You'd see them at the supermarkets. I mean, again, we had a real community where everybody knew each other. So to your point, yes, if I first had to get the beating at school, then come home and get another one, like
right.
The family name, like
that's right. They were the same way. Like, you will not embarrass the Medley name. That's exactly. I mean, it's like the same deal. I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm smiling and cracking up with the mic button off because yes, I know the feeling, but I do believe that's what made us who we are today. Because like, I know I have many guests on that do multiple things. I consider you like a Renaissance man. You're not pigeonholed into one area. You do multiple things. I mean, you have that. I mean, and they all dovetail. They work. And the fact that you just said, because the impetus of this show was 23 years ago now. The station manager wanted someone to host a show on reading with the hopes of generating more interest in reading. And over the years, most of my guests as kids, because they're authors or whatever, but they were avid readers as kids.
Mm-hmm.
There's a connection between reading, writing, and success.
Right.
And so the fact that you said your dad was like, no, you're going to read or you're going to do book report. Yeah, I know what your schoolwork is, but you're going to do see there again. If you look at Ben Carson's story, his is very similar. His mom did the same thing with him. She couldn't even read. And she pretended she could read, to fool them, but she had him do the same thing. She couldn't read them reports they wrote, but she made them write them.
And my dad was just, again, at some point I realized he had no clue about calculus and algebra, but he made sure I did it, and he'd have somebody check it. Right. I was at some point like, he has no clue what I'm doing, but I better show him something. and I better come off an A that I got it right.
But see, again, this is so critical, especially because you're African-American male, I'm African-American, for us coming up as kids to have parents that instill that. Because and we'll get into this as we go through the conversation, what the stereotypes are, what the myths are, what the misinformation has been about Black, and particularly Black males.
And my son is a self-described nerd. And I said, yes, you are. And so it always makes me hysterically happy when people see this brown-skinned guy that has this kind of like, a little bit of a hip-hop look. And they characterize him one way, then he opens his mouth and they go, oops, this guy's really smart. my dad, and it's interesting, one day we were talking, and similar to our conversation, we're talking about when I grew up, the family library was in my room. So that was my world. I was always reading because the family library was in my room, all the bookshelves. So I was always reading. And one day I was bragging and said, Chris, the Botanica library was in my room. I read all the Botanica encyclopedia. He said, Dad, I read it twice. Like, oh. Okay, burst my bubble. That's okay. I'm glad.
So in terms of because I was talking a couple of minutes ago in terms of you being like a therapist and a pastor. Now the two go together. Mm-hmm. I mean, they really do. But how did that come about? Because
I was a pastor let me back up. You asked about early beginnings. And around the fourth grade or so, I had one of my classmates come to the house. She was a young lady girl. And I said, lay on the couch. And my mom was having a heart attack. Like, what? My dad said, we're right here. Nothing's going to happen. Let's let it play out. And I said, so tell me about your problem so I can write this down.
So you were, as a kid, you were doing this?
Right.
Okay.
And so I always knew I was going to, at some point, and back then I was a big Bob Newhart fan. And he had this program where he was a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist or something. And I'm like, I want to be like that one day. So that was kind of the beginnings of it in that regard. I've always looked at it that I help people, and I do it in multiple ways, whether it's teaching, whether it's psychotherapy, whether it's as a pastor. I help people. Some people would say that you're a healer. Either one of those things. It's not really that complex to me. I help people.
No, and that's really when you boil it down, you're exactly right. That's why I say all of it meshes. It's not like it's something that's totally opposite. They all work together with each other. Now, in terms of, again, going back to, because in many instances, I really do focus on the African-American male piece because I know what we deal with in terms of what folks think of us and have thought of us and our history, so forth and so on. So I'm looking at your bio and I'm seeing here in terms of the long history of New Brunswick Theological to be granted tenure. You were only the second Afro-American in a long history and then become the dean. So you're about like breaking barriers. Talk a little bit about that in terms of breaking barriers as a Black man.
It's in my DNA. I can't help it. If I wanted to, I'd have to do this. Jackie Robinson was our cousin on my dad's side of the family.
Okay.
And so I have another cousin who was one of the first Black women to bring Black cosmetics into the high-end stores. And on and on and on. I was at a family reunion, and I was so proud of myself. Hey, I made dean. I wasn't getting the reaction that I thought. I said, maybe they didn't hear me. I said, I just became the first Black dean in the Brunswick Theological Seminary. They're looking at me like, okay, so you sit over that table now for all the other deans in our family. Oh. Okay. Okay. So I think that's part of it. And it's interesting. Some of my colleagues assumed that the person that was educating me how to be a dean was this white woman from Princeton. And nothing was further from the truth. When I was asked if I would be the first black dean, I immediately reached out to 3 of my friends who were black and were the dean. And said, and 2 of them are black males. And say, so how do I do this thing? What do I need to know? I know the overall idea behind dean, but as a black male, what's going to be different? And they took me under their wing, and to this day, we're good friends, and they were my mentors on how to do this, because I wanted to do it through a black perspective. And I remember it must have been like the second day I was there in my new office, still trying to get my books rearranged, and these 4 black women walked in the office, closed the door, and I'm like, uh-oh. 4 black women in their 40s, 50s closed the door. What did I do now? and they said, we're proud of you. We're on your train. We're pushing your train. We're pulling your train. But dude, don't mess up, because it reflects on all of us.
Right. That's exactly right. So they were exactly.
And then they walked out like, oh, okay. and they were right. And I did feel that. And I realized that even when I'm not in the classroom, I was still teaching, because I was teaching when they knew, like, I know he's pissed off at that, but that was some dumb stuff that just happened. I know he's fuming. Let's watch how he handles it. We saw the microaggression. I know he saw the same microaggression. Let's watch how he handles it. Right. I realized I was modeling for Black and Latinx and other faculty, as well as for the students, who many of whom were second career, in their 40s, 50s, maybe even 60s, and they were going through craziness on their job, and racism, sexism, and on and on and on. So I realized I was saying, here's how you handle this in this kind of a setting. So I knew I was doing that. And so one day I'm flying off to someplace, and I had to change planes in Philadelphia International Airport, and I see Cornell West sitting down. I guess he was in the process of changing planes as well or something. And then, I was being cordial, waved at me, hey, hi. And he said, no, come have a seat. I'm like, uh-oh, I've been summoned. And you know the thing around elders, when the elders say come.
That's right.
Is yes, And so I sit down next to him, and I'm going to introduce myself. He says, I know who you are. And I'm looking like, Cornell West knows who I am. Okay, all right. I'm impressed, all right? And he says, so here's your problem. I'm like, here's my problem. I'm in therapy now in the airport. But and he says, the black folks think you're not doing enough, and the white folks think you're doing too much. And I said, that is absolutely correct.
Wow. Wow.
I said, okay, so you did figure out my problem. Okay, right.
Now,
he said basically and then they just be yourself. Whatever, just be yourself. Okay, I can do that.
Absolutely, because I like I said, pastor as well as the psychoanalyst, the therapist, and all these. But you have such a wonderful sense of humor. I think you're hilarious myself, but you have such a wonderful, simple sense of humor. How do you keep that, given that you're constantly listening to other people's problems?
Because my mom and dad had a healthy sense of self, and they were forever cracking jokes on each other. And sometimes as kids, we'd sit down and keep score. Mommy got you on that one, Daddy. Got it. What's your comeback? And it was clear they loved each other. Like any other couple, they had their issues. Yeah, we didn't miss that. But they had a healthy sense of humor. And my dad was a charmer. My wife tells me I'm a charmer, but that's a whole other conversation. But my dad, he could charm anybody. And he had this sense of humor. And I think unconsciously, I became him in some regard.
Okay. That makes sense. But yeah, like I said, you're both of your jobs, or all of your jobs to a degree, is kind of listening to other folks' issues. whether it's on the pastor side or the therapist side, you're still taking in. So how do you, and I even asked this question to Reverend Clayton, so like, how do you like not take all that in? How do you listen to all that and still?
Because what I've learned is when I'm present, I'm 1,000% present. When you walk out the door, leave it, let it walk out the door with you, etch a sketch or erase or whatever, and move on to the next thing. And I was blessed to be mentored by now she's passed away, but Phyllis Harrison Ross, Dr. Phyllis Harrison Ross, who was considered the mother of Black psychiatry. And he would say to me, you know that thing that you learned in school about disassociation is really bad? Yeah. He says, disassociate. You don't want to take that crap home. Okay. Got it. Disassociate. Don't take it home. Got it. Leave it office. Got it. And I think the other part of it, I laugh at myself.
Right.
And so I think you have to be strong enough to be able to laugh at yourself and say, that was not one of your better ideas, Willard. You do get that, right? Okay. And if you can laugh at yourself, and what we do is very serious. I mean,
right.
Life and death. It involves the court system sometimes, people making decisions, life decisions, dealing with grief and trauma, and all of that stuff is really very serious stuff. However, I try to find the lighter side of it when I can, and sometimes use it to disarm people.
Right.
Like, when you're a little too wound up. So how do I get you to like unwind up? I got to get some humor in here and get you to laugh at yourself. Everything you do isn't always have to be so serious. I think it's one of the challenges we have now as public caregivers is we're in this space where everything is so serious.
Right.
It's like, take it down 7 notches. Yeah, it's serious and times are challenging, but oh wow, especially Christians, it's called joy. Where's the joy?
Correct.
And it's interesting. One of my Islamic imam friends brought this to my attention. He says, ask some people this. And I said, so what do you do for fun? Where's your joy? As though I asked a trick question. I've seen some of the most well-known celebrities, judges, surgeons, soccer moms, soccer dads, trip over that question about fun and joy.
Right.
And look at me like, okay, so what's behind that? Nothing behind. I want to know what you do for fun. Well,
right.
Where's your joy? That wasn't a trick question. And so I realized through that lens that, A, we're wound up. And then secondly, especially when I do marriage and family therapy stuff, everybody comes in, they married Attila the Hun. They got the worst partner in the whole wide world. That you know the speech. Just don't details change. It's the same speech.
Right.
And so to try to get them so they can hear each other, when I can, I'll try to lighten it up. Because otherwise, you're going to spend a whole hour and nobody heard what the other person said.
Correct.
So stuck on, take my side because I want you to say that this person is really bad. And they people do quote unquote bad things. Doesn't make them a bad person.
Correct.
And so what I like about being a psychoanalyst is this person did some bad things. Let's find out how they got there.
Right.
And most people will say, you did bad things. When you throw the book at you, you bad person, call it a day. I'm like, yeah, you did some bad things. I read the memo, but I want to understand how you got there and what was your thinking that led you to make these choices. That, I think, is what's different as a psychoanalyst.
No, absolutely. Now, listening audience, I hope you've been with me since 6, but certainly if you didn't join me at 6, I definitely hope you've been with me since 7, because my guest this morning is the Reverend Dr. Willard Walden Christopher Ashley Sr. And we're talking about a plethora of topics, even though they're all related. Now, I see here you have 4 books published. What are your 4 books?
Well, the latest one is New Rules for Radicals, Techniques and Tactics for Faith-Based Leaders. My quote-unquote tenure book, if you will, back in 2012, which is still selling, but I put that out there, is Learning to Lead, Lessons in Leadership for People of Faith. And then the book that's now in its 2nd edition, which is kind of good news, bad news, is Disaster Spiritual Care, Practical Responses to Community, Regional, and national tragedy. And I'm ecstatic about those books, but also have something new that just came out this past Tuesday, addressing diversity dynamics in group therapy. And there I'm a chapter contributor. So I'm happy about that. I couldn't wait I just put on my Facebook page, it never gets old. Open up the box and see a book that has your name in it.
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, I remember when you text me about this recent release, that's when I said, "Oh, come on the show," because it just dropped. So tell us a little bit. Let's start. We'll go backwards. We'll start with the latest one, trying to give a synopsis, and then we'll work our way back to the other three. So this one that just released that you contributed to, what was that about?
It's talking about racialized enactments in group therapy. In other words, trying to bring to the attention of both the clinician as well as the persons in the group for group therapy, how race impacts their interactions. And particularly since COVID, how many of us don't realize that we're in survival mode.
Right.
And so trying to highlight that as a group therapist, what does survival mode look like, feel like? As someone in a group trying to get group therapy, what are some of the things that happen? And then just trying to flag for clinicians their own willingness to do self-interrogation. If you look at the statistics, Black clinicians on a good day may be 5 or 6% of the population.
Right.
So we cannot service all the people of color that want a Black clinician. This can't happen. And so I've always taken the position, if I can find some people of Euro descent that are willing to learn what are the ways you address some of the issues that Black people face, you need allies. So they can't. Again, if you're up 24/7, you still can't meet the demand and the need. So you have to find people that are Euro descent that kind of get it or want to get it.
That's interesting, only because I was going to ask, and you just kind of touched on it, was how much does race play a part in the people who choose their therapist? Because I know for me, that was the first. I want a Black therapist. That was bottom line. I'm looking for a Black therapist. So how much does that? And you brought up an interesting point that I hadn't thought about. There's so few of us that we couldn't handle everyone who wanted one if we could.
Right, and so that it's. And again, here's my disclaimer: it may be who I attract. However. Most folks that walk into the door say, "I'm so glad I found you because I wanted a Black therapist."
Uh-huh.
And there's something to be said. I mean, depending on who you ask, it doesn't matter. It does matter. And I'm not going to live my life through you, but I at least know where to poke.
Right.
And so as a Black clinician, someone say, "You know what I mean?" And I'll say, I understand that, but, your crazy family might be different than my crazy family. Let me hear your story. We both agree we had crazy families. So yours was probably a little different than mine. Your craziness was different. So let me hear your version of your craziness. But at least you have an idea of where to poke. So as a Black clinician, person comes in, and it doesn't matter what their social status has been, what their economic status has been. They come in the office. They plop down in the chair, and I'll say, "So what brings you to therapy? Don't tell me your BMW or your Benz. We're not being that kind of concrete." They go, "Oh, well," and usually it's some form of racism has gotten the best of them.
Wow.
And I know there's another word to describe it. I just can't think of it right now, but they'll do some version of imposter syndrome. Say, I've accomplished all these things. I went to Harvard, I went to Yale, you name it. I'm in the NBA, NFL, but I feel as though I don't belong. And then I'll say, well, that's on purpose because that's how racism tears you down and attacks your ego.
That is interesting only because I just did a paper on that. There was 2 case studies the professor gave us about principal. One was Hispanic principal, the other was a Black principal. They had the imposter syndrome. And so the fact that you bring that up, I know exactly what you're talking about because I just did a paper on it. So yeah, that's interesting. And you bring up some very good points in terms of the dynamics. So that's what your article is about, or the contribution is about.
On that particular book, we may not bring up the imposter syndrome per se, but trying to address how race dynamics plays
Right.
out in group therapy.
And that's
Right.
group therapy. What about like one-to-one therapy? Is it the same or is it different?
Oh no, absolutely. Race play. So it's interesting. So I consult a number of clinicians, both Black, white, Latinx, etc., and I try to help them to find ways to integrate the racial dynamics into their practice, into their not-for-profits, et cetera, et cetera. And so more so since George Floyd in the pandemic,
Right.
I've done a lot of work around how do you integrate these principles, these concepts into your private practice, even if you're a white clinician and don't have any Black patients or clients. You're telling me race is not an issue with your patients and your clients. They don't have any Black employees or Black coworkers. I mean, come on. So
Right.
how do you incorporate that? And my assumption is oftentimes it's not the fault of the patient client, it's the clinician's unwillingness to bring these topics up and talk about them because it makes them uneasy.
That is correct. See, this is what, over the years, over history, and over time, what I have observed and experienced is the dominant group, for the most part, wants everyone else to know about them, but they don't necessarily want to know about anybody else. Like they want everybody to study and know about them, but when it comes down, okay, well, why don't everybody know about everybody so that we can all, understand each other? That's where a lot of times the rub comes in. I remember with, it wasn't Kwanzaa Jakufa, it was the other one. It was, I'm trying to think of him. He wrote the psychological, about the chains, his name, for whatever reason, it always, Akbar, that's what I'm trying to get. It came to me. Was
yeah.
Dr. Akbar. And in one of his books, he says, there is nowhere you can go where white greatness is not celebrated. So Black folks ought to be the same way. We put up our trophies and our statues and pictures and artwork. And because he's not saying we're going to take down or do away with the white greatness, but he's saying we ought to accentuate and celebrate ours. Mm-hmm. Therefore, again, like I'm saying, the dominant group, they have no problem with everybody learning about them. But now when it comes time for them to learn about somebody else, to your point, well, listen, this could help you. The more you know about everybody, the better off you're going to be able to serve them, and they're going to want to come to you.
It's so that part of my work, both as a pastor and as an educator, I take great pride and trying to dispel the myths that our kids and adults are told. And I'll say, so you're told you can't do science and math. You know that's not accurate. Now they'll look at me and they'll say, look who built the pyramids. That's geometry.
Correct.
Look at the medical system. I said, the research shows there's no way in the world that Aristotle and Plato could have written all they did in an amount of time if they were up 24/7 all the time.
Correct.
They borrowed some of that stuff from a place in Africa.
Correct.
It's called Egypt, but it's still in Africa. But then I'll say, I don't like, and you'd heard me say this before, I don't like the application. So let's start there. But don't tell me my kids can't do science and math.
Correct.
They know the metric system better than most folks do. They understand hostile takeovers, okay?
Correct.
They get it, okay? Again, I don't like the application, but don't tell me they can't do. And they know how much to put in their product to water it down.
That's right.
You still get high.
That's
okay?
right.
That's science, all right? So I mean, so they, come on, don't tell me they can't do math. What infuriates me is that with all of our scholarship, we are just now learning that there were a group of Black women in NASA
Correct.
called computers.
Yes.
Why are we just now learning that?
That is correct. If it wasn't for that movie a few years ago, Hidden Figures, you're right.
Right, yeah. I mean, so it's those kind of things that is buried, and we have to dispel those myths to say, no, our kids are very smart. You take a guy who takes a peanut and a sweet potato and finds over hundreds of uses for a sweet potato and a peanut. That's brilliant.
Yes, it is.
So I mean, so trying to build self-esteem by, like you say, we're not throwing out your history. We're adding to it.
Correct.
Parts of our history, and the two can and should be together. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "I want the black pilot."
Correct.
Yeah.
The Tuskegee Airmen. That's right.
Yeah. I want the black pilot. Okay,
Yep.
Okay, cool. So being able to tell those stories and affirm that part of our history and the importance of it. So again, so that your self-esteem is built up and you understand that, yes, you do belong and you can hang.
No, that's absolutely right. And see, again, you're in a unique position, a very good position to spread the word between your therapy and the pastor. Because I know, in your sermons, I'll be right dead spot on, because they're not just the spiritual piece, there's the educational piece. There's the historical piece in terms of African Americans and our part in the roles that we played and what we should be doing now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Amen to all the above.
Do the two between the psychotherapist and do they ever cross paths? Like whenever you're pastoring the church, does your psychotherapist and vice versa?
Oh, I shouldn't say this out loud because I know some people are listening, but absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not as much that I learned how to be a psychoanalyst. That was always in me. If I didn't get paid to do it, I still would be doing it because I've always been a reflective thinker. I've always been analytical. However, I learned different ways to apply the analysis, different ways to think about a problem or a situation, and to rearrange the thought process that way, and to include the biological element, which I tell people before I became a licensed psychoanalyst, I grew up being one as a black man in America.
Right.
And they look at me and I go, what? And I say, I'm walking down 125th Street. I see 5 black guys walk toward me. I have to accurately read their intentions.
Right.
They don't mean to do me any harm, or it's gang initiation night and I'm in trouble.
Right. That's exactly right.
I got to figure out what's going on. I said, I'm going up Route 95 on the way to Yale. I got to stop at the rest stop. And I see some folks in camouflage. I got to accurately figure out, do I need to wait a minute if I go in the restroom until they come out? Or it's okay. And much the same way, try to get on an elevator with someone who's 5'2", a size 2 and white, take the next elevator because God forbid she says, I did something intimidating.
Right.
So you are constantly having to assess and read people accurately, or you don't get to be 70 plus. I mean,
correct.
It's just reality. Just reality.
It's true. So in terms of in African American or Black history, historically, because of things like the Tuskegee experiment and other atrocities that's happened to us in the medical or therapeutic field, there's a mistrust there with Black people. And I mean, this, you tell a Black person about going to a therapist, they're like totally, how do you debunk that myth that it's okay, that there's nothing wrong with if you're Black, going to a therapist?
Again, because I was mentored by Dr. Phyllis Harrison Ross, mother of Black psychiatry, and she didn't coin this, but the first time I heard it was through her. And the Black clinician approach was, there's nothing wrong with you. What has happened to you is wrong. Let's talk about that. And if you take that approach, folks got more than enough to talk about. Because they have experienced. Right. So again, think about that. That instead of saying that, you're a plethora of illnesses and dysfunction, say, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You have a normal response to the mess that happened to you.
Right.
If that craziness happened to anybody else, they would respond inappropriately also. So no, we're not going to single you out, not going to make you ill because you what you went through, living in public housing and dealing with rats and roaches and urine in an elevator and all that kind of stuff, anybody would react to that. So, you're not unusual because you're like, what the heck? No, nothing's wrong with you. What has happened to you is wrong. Let's talk about that. It's just a different kind of an approach. Well, I don't have to make you sick. and I'll just say that you need help. And then again, to what you said earlier, just the sense of being able to laugh. And sometimes you laugh at yourself. Sometimes you laugh at the racism. Like that is so crazy. Okay, come on, that was so out there. Or even you have to laugh at that. Okay, come on, really, those kind of things. And looking at it that way.
No, you're right, because dealing with the school, dealing with my teachers and parents and kids and whatnot, because, I mean, our kids come to school with some serious issues.
Right.
And one of the things I always tell my teachers, because, a lot of times they'll just make the leap, oh, they're just bad. It's not, I said, no, they're not just bad. I said, they have some serious issues out of these various homes. They don't have what you and I described as how we were raised. Mm-hmm. So what I tell them is, to your point of what you just made, if I grew up in the same situation they were in, I might come to school angry too.
Mm-hmm. And I think that a mistake some of us made, and we're correcting it now, is no, it's okay to be angry. So, no, you have to figure out how to channel it because we don't want you getting fired. Okay?
Right.
It's okay to be angry, but again, we have to show how to be angry and use that constructively in ways that, you should have rage. Are we watching the same movie? If we're watching the same movie, then you better have some rage. So this stuff is crazy.
Right.
However, how do you use that in a way that you don't lose your job? Because we don't need out of work folks, okay? But
that's right.
Need you to get that paper, boo, okay? So.
But it's true because I sent you that interview that I did. And I said, before I really started sending it out, I had to listen through it from beginning to end to make sure I didn't say anything that would get me fired. And let me go through this before I send this thing out, because I don't want it to get back and wind up, haunting me, or wind up, did you say that? And I'm like, well, we got it. But after I vetted it, it was fine. But to your point, yes, that's exactly right. But again, going back to my question, for a lot of Black people, they automatically associate with going to a therapist with being crazy.
And so let me help you with that. So and I may have some people listening with you. Yeah, that's what he does. They walk in the door and I says, so let's start from the beginning. The person you just picked out to be your therapist is certifiable. I am certifiably nuts, crazy, whatever term you want to use. It may be pejorative. It's okay. I've got issues. Okay. So if you want a therapist that doesn't have issues, that's not me. If you want a therapist that's certifiable, that's got some issues, okay, then we can talk. So then it kind of, I'm intentional in doing that, and there's a technique behind it. Right. But they get the point that my therapist said he's certifiable. Like, yikes, so what do I have to worry about? He told me he's certifiable, and then I may say, I'm a Black man in America. How can I not be? Right. Right. If I'm not numbed up and dumbed up, and I'm watching and paying attention, then absolutely I'm certifiable. Absolutely it's okay right. For you to be certifiable. So to answer your first question, yes, you are crazy. Let's find out how you got there. Right. No, that's absolutely right. And see, this is the thing. Going back to like what you were just saying, it's not the person, it's what you experience. Because up until a few years ago, I had never really experienced serious trauma. But if you've ever been traumatized, you have to do something. You can't just sit there and internalize that or try to work that out for yourself. Mm-hmm. I've had the question posed to me. People say, well, you're a marriage and family therapist. Have you been divorced? Absolutely. Then they say, well, I can't work with you because you've been divorced. I said, no, let me help you here. I have a PhD in how to mess up a marriage and one how to make one better. You get the best of both worlds. Like, okay. Oh, my goodness. But I tell you what, like I said earlier, the sense of humor works. It does. At least for me, it does. It really does. Like you said. And they get that part. Like, no, I got a PhD in how to mess one up. Trust me. I've done it. I got a lot of practice in how to mess them up. And then I had to go to school to figure out how to make them better. Okay, so you get both. Ask my exes. They'll say, only a boy can mess them up now. Now, this is the thing, even in the pulpit, that sense of humor is there even as you're delivering your sermons. I was blessed to have a New Testament professor who taught us the New Testament through humor. And, you went to Sunday school, you read the Bible, yada, 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 but nothing stayed in my brain the way it did going through Montclair State University, free plug, y'all. and this professor of New Testament showing us that the humor in the Bible.
Right.
Like, wow. Okay, so, because Paul said, I wish you'd be like me. Well, maybe except for the change part, but wow, that is funny. Okay. Oh wow, yeah, sense of humor. Okay, this is cool. And so I try to bring that in. Here we go. The nerd part of me says, well, what something that nobody else is saying.
Right.
Everybody's going to talk about this. Everybody's going to talk about that. You can almost predict the sermon. Hey, here's we talk about this. So if you bring the humor in, like, but they're not going to have this angle though. So that's part of what drives me is the humor part.
Right. So I see here in terms of the 4 articles in the Men of Color Study Bible. Now, is that men of color like there were black men in the study, or are you talking about Bible characters?
No, it was a Bible that was written for black men.
Right. Okay, that's what I thought.
And Jeremiah Wright is in there. John P. Key has an article in there. I can't think of the other names to drop, but those two stuck in my mind. Jeremiah Wright has some stuff in there. John P. Key has something in the Bible, and it was addressed to black men.
Okay, now I know I have the African American. I have that Bible. I have to look for this one, the Men of Color Study Bible. Okay, and then back to the other 3 books. I know you had your latest release. The other 3. Let's talk a little bit about each one of them. Don't give it away because we want ultimately people to go get it. But what kind of
Yes, please go get it.
Yes.
New Rules for Radicals basically says you pick your issue, whatever your issue may be. This is kind of a cheat sheet how to get the attention of those who make decisions. And so I'm not telling you what issues you pick. Whatever issues you pick, Democrat, Republican, Independent, that's not my fight on this book. Is that wherever you stand and you want something to be changed, here's how you go use the system in order to change things. And it's been amazing in grad school. I realized so many people didn't take Civics 101.
Right.
Have no idea how a bill gets passed or how a bill gets created. So it's kind of, a little bit of that. Like here's how you take on City Hall and you win, so to speak. And again, have fun while you're doing it. So that's that. Learning to Lead, it was one of those kind of books. There's about 30 different contributors. It's an edited volume, and it really is talking about spiritual leadership. And so it's a how-to. What do you need to be an effective spiritual leader? It talks about economics, talks about care, pastoral care, talks about organizing, and then at the end of the book, it talks about different faith traditions and a really small sampling of proper etiquette in different faith traditions. You don't hold out your hand for women in certain faith traditions. You don't touch those kinds of things. It's not exhaustive, but at least it kind of gives you an idea, like, be aware of this, put this on your radar screen. And then disaster spiritual care came out of good friend and colleague, Rabbi Stephen Roberts, and I was asked to do a presentation. And we were kind of waiting to the last minute, like, oh boy, woo, let's do the research. We couldn't find a resource that gave us what we needed. And people kept saying, that's because you didn't write it. And like, okay, we have an ego, but come on, it's not that big. Somebody else wrote this. They had not. They realized, like, holy crap, I guess we do have to be the ones to write this. So that's how that came about. And it's since 2008 or so. It's again second edition, second volume. It has been the go-to textbook for dealing with spiritual care following a disaster. Talks about anniversaries, talks about grief and loss, psychotherapy for people, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's that book. Yeah.
Now there was one that you were going to start. I don't know if you did. It was about the Afrocentric and the church, and
I got
sidetracked. Okay,
it's on my to-do list. Yes.
So when that gets done, I'll have you back to talk about that one.
Okay.
So we're down to the last few minutes. I've had some good laughs talking to you, learned a lot. I hope my audience has as well. But what I do for the last few minutes is I turn the microphone off and allow you to promote. You had the opportunity to websites, book signings, anything else you'd like to promote, shout outs. The only thing you cannot do is say a dollar amount. But anything short of the dollar amount, I'm going to turn the mic off, and it's your opportunity to promote as much as you like.
Okay. So, again, thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I hope that you've learned something from this and that you found this to be informative. If you'd like more information, my website is Your Psychoanalyst, or you can just put my name into Google, and it will populate and it will pop up. I do have a private practice in Upper Montclair, New Jersey. When you go into Google and put my name in, it'll tell you how to reach me, either through that vehicle or other ways to reach out. I enjoy meeting new people. I hope that you and I can meet at some point. And again, the books are New Rules for Radicals, is published by Judson Press. Learning to Lead, Lessons in Leadership for People of Faith, and Disaster Spiritual Care, Practical Clergy Responses to Community, Regional, and National Tragedy. And the one that just came out, is Addressing Diversity Dynamics in Group Therapy. And so those are the books, how to reach me. If you're looking for a place to do, if you're a social worker and want to do a doctor of social work, I teach both at Rutgers University, Doctor of Social Work, as well as NYU. And I'd love to see you there so we can have some learning together and have some fun.
Well, Dr. Ashley, I thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, I've known you now for the last few years, and our paths continue to cross. And I'm so glad I had the opportunity to get you here on the show. Have enjoyed, or shall I say, been inspired and motivated by the information, and certainly enjoyed the laughter. And
by the way, it just hit me. You of all people should talk. Your pastor is hysterical.
I know he is. That's why the two of us get along so well the same way, because he's crazy too. He is definitely like my brother from another mother, because our backgrounds and experiences are extremely similar as well. We even had the same first cars, a 1975 Monte Carlo. Like both of us, like our first cars was the same car. And a lot of times when he's sharing stuff, I'm like, oh my God, we had the same experience. And we're a few years apart. I'm older than him. But we've had a lot of very similar experience. And yes, he is hilarious as well. He loves to laugh. I know he said he gets his fix of I Love Lucy and and for me it's the Honeymooners. But yes, he is. That's why I say I love to laugh. So that's why I get it with other people who love to laugh. We right in there.
If I'm feeling down, I'll go onto Facebook and say, what did the Reverend Dr. King say today?
Yes.
Okay. I feel better.
That's absolutely right. So, yes, like I said, humor works for me. It does. I'm kind of like you. It's like the most morbid situations I can find something humorous in. And so the laughter just works for me. It just does. So I appreciate that. I mean, even in serious situations, because I know even in some of our conversations, even no matter what I was feeling, I'd still laugh like, oh, my goodness.
There you go.
So in any event, have a wonderfully blessed day. If I don't see you before Christmas, have a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Kwanzaa, and a Happy New Year.
Amen. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care with you and yours.
Okay. God bless.
God bless as well. Take care. All right. Well, that is another episode of the Reading Circle. I had a blast with Reverend Dr. Willard Ashley Sr. And yes, like I said, I know Dr. Ashley in a couple of different capacities, and because he's many times, when Reverend Clayton is not there, he actually comes, and he usually is our preacher for the morning when Reverend Clayton is not there. And so many times, a lot of times I'll greet him at the door, what have you, and we constantly text each other. He always lets me know that's why I knew to invite him on the show this morning, because he told me about the release of that latest contribution. So I said, oh, you know what? I got an opening Saturday morning, the 21st. Would you like it? And he was like, sure. I'm like, great. So that's how this morning came about. But in any event, wonderful brother. Like I said, he'll keep you laughing.